All right, guys. Hey, Paul McClain here, coming to you with the holiday series. So the purpose of today's video is to talk about objections around the holidays. And so the first thing is, let's talk about the phones. So the phones, in the beginning, I didn't want to run appointments on certain days during the holidays. So my first year, that was my struggle, like working from feelings, not working from like why I was doing what I was doing in the payoff. So it was more focused on the pain of like, man, I want to just go hang out with the family. It's cold out, whatever. And that's how I saw it. And so when I was calling and booking appointments, I almost said certain things to get the objections, because in the end of the day, I truly didn't want to. So like subconsciously, I was saying things and posturing myself in such a way where I wasn't the doctor, I was the patient. So when they gave me certain objections, I was just like, okay, got it. And I would just not book it. So I had to fix my focus. And so I realized that, man, every appointment I don't book, that costs me like $500 in annual premium. So I did the math. I divided what I write at the end of the week, like the AP. I divided by how many appointments I booked. And I was like, every appointment I book, that it doesn't matter if they don't show up, they don't buy, whatever, it's worth $500 in annualized premium. And then I looked at the fact that most producers make most of their income in the last quarter of the year. So I was like, man, I got to get my mind around this. And so I fixed my focus and said, hey, no, this is the time of the year where their priorities of family, it's easily seen. They see them at the different get-togethers of Thanksgiving and all that. So they're thinking about their family. And so I convinced myself of that. And then I reminded myself of the fact that this client could die the day after Thanksgiving. They could die the week of Christmas. In fact, there's more community, more traveling in the holiday season. So there's more exposure to getting an accident. And it happened one time that changed everything, where I called a client that I could have pushed. I could have, got the appointment booked, and I was just like loose on it. And I called him up. The spouse is crying hysterically. And they say, Paul, my husband didn't make it home last night. And I got to live with that. And I remember how hard that was to handle. And I was like, that's never going to happen again. And so remind yourself of how important this is, because when the value of the protection is clear in your mind, the objection that they give you will seem so much smaller that your conviction will prevail and you'll book that appointment. And so that's the first thing, is mindset and making sure your mind is right. Second thing is, talk about practicality. Let's talk about the mechanics. Like, what do you say if you get it? Because you'll still get it. So they say, Paul, listen, this week's booked. We got shopping to do. We're going to be in and out. Like, it just doesn't work. Can you call us back in 2 weeks after the holidays? I say, perfect, Bob. I understand being busy. In fact, I overproduce. I have too many kids, so I get that. And on top of that, right now, we've got myself as a manager. I'm spread thin, managing multiple counties because we're behind. We see in the holiday season more families sending the request because they're more aware of how important it is, and their family being the number one priority. And also, we think that they also are aware of the mortality that increases through traveling and what have you in that holiday season. So we are overwhelmed. What I can do for you is this. I'll put down some notes to see how I can best accommodate for you. What time are you typically back in the door? 5 o'clock? Great. What about your wife? 2? All right, perfect. 2 o'clock. So Bob, I'm going to do this. Tomorrow my schedule is completely booked, but I do know how important this is for you, as it is with most families. I'm going to put you down at 7. I'm going to try to move my 7 to an earlier time. If I can't do that, I'll let you know, but let's just plan on 7. Now, because of that, Bob, me making this work for you guys, as I know it's important, I'm going to need a window from 6:30 to 7:30. Is that fair enough? It is. Okay, perfect. So I got you down there. Only thing I ask and expect is that you're both definitely going to be there at that time. Does that make sense? Yes. And you book it. Now let's go into the in-home. So in-home presentation, you're sitting with them. You go through it all, and they say, Paul, listen, the holidays are tight. Christmas costs a lot. This is taking place. We can't afford it, right? Now, what you got to realize is this. Most objections are rooted in like just 2 or 3. So that they might put a bow on it to make the present or the objection look different, but it's the same one. So that objection, in essence, is just the I can't afford it objection, right? They might say Christmas, holidays. We need to get this in place on January. I handle it the same way. I say, perfect. Listen, Bob, I get it. I understand with the Christmas and the gifts and people coming in. I understand it's an expense. I mean, I've got too many kids, so I understand. I got 4, so I know it. But what I know is this. Every client I sit with, Bob, they're in the same situation as you. Every one of them. They all feel the same way. Christmas is an expense and it happens every year. And what I realize is this, and this is what most clients will tell me. They'll say, Paul, listen, with all these things that are uncertain, all these things that I got to juggle, the one thing that's certain is that my family is the number one priority. And if I don't have them protected, Christmas doesn't even happen. In fact, having a roof over our head doesn't happen. The financial struggle doesn't happen. And they are reminded that, hey, at the end of the day, the thing that you got to fit in first is your family and the protection thereof. Everything else fits around that. And so that's why everybody in your situation, this is the best time to get the plan in place and figure out how to fit things around it, because next year Christmas will show up. And at the end of the day, if you don't come home tomorrow, the worst thing that could happen is your wife having to live with the fact that you're never going to be here again, telling the kids that daddy's not coming home, the finality that brings, and then on top of that, thinking about, how do I pay the bills? And so I'm sure you'd agree, like most every other family, that this is something that makes sense to put in place first, and then everything else fits around it. Do you see how that makes sense, Bob and Mary? Well, yes, I do. Okay, great. Grab your driver's license. We'll see if we get you qualified. So that's how you handle that, guys. You know, just be convicted even more so in how important this protection is. Remind yourself before you get out of the car, if you knew that client was going to die tomorrow, if you knew for a fact, maybe God told you and you knew and they didn't, would you just lay down? Or would you have to get thrown out of their house before you left because you knew how important it was to act now and get it now? What we do, the service we provide, is that important. Don't muddle it down. Don't downplay it. Magnify it so you go out there with the right conviction to get them to make the right choices. So have a happy holidays. Hope this makes sense and this helps you while you're on the phones and in the home and with your mindset. And we'll talk to you soon. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.